Welcome to this video on how to become a GRC analyst with no previous experience. We will explore the skills you need, the tools commonly used by GRC teams, relevant certifications, practical portfolio projects, and a step-by-step career roadmap. Cybersecurity is often associated with coding, penetration testing, and malware analysis. However, cybersecurity also needs professionals who can manage business risks, policies, audits, security controls, and regulatory requirements. That is where a GRC analyst plays an important role. Before discussing the career roadmap, let us first understand what makes GRC different from other areas of cybersecurity. So, what makes GRC different from other cybersecurity roles? Technical security teams usually configure systems, investigate vulnerabilities, monitor threats, and implement security controls. Business leaders, however, need to understand how those technical issues may affect the organization. A GRC analyst helps connect these two groups. For example, an engineer may confirm that a security control has been enabled. The GRC analyst may then ask, which risk does this control reduce? Who approved it? And what evidence proves that it is operating correctly? GRC is therefore not simply about completing checklists. It is about connecting technology, business risk, security requirements, and evidence. To understand this role clearly, we first need to understand what GRC means in cybersecurity. So, what is GRC in cybersecurity? GRC stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance. Governance defines how cybersecurity is managed within an organization. It includes policies, responsibilities, approval processes, reporting structures, and decision-making. Risk focuses on identifying events that could harm the organization. These risks may include data exposure, weak access controls, vulnerable third-party vendors, unpatched systems, or cloud misconfigurations. Compliance focuses on meeting applicable laws, regulations, contracts, and security framework requirements. A simple way to remember these three areas is governance establishes direction. Risk identifies what could go wrong. Compliance helps demonstrate that required controls are being followed. Now that we understand the three pillars of GRC, let us look at what a GRC analyst actually does. So, what does a GRC analyst actually do? A GRC analyst helps manage security policies, assess risks, review controls, collect audit evidence, identify compliance gaps, and track corrective actions. The work often follows a connected process. First, the analyst identifies a business or cybersecurity requirement. Next, the analyst maps that requirement to a security control. The analyst then works with the responsible team to collect evidence showing whether the control is properly implemented. When a weakness or missing control is identified, the issue is documented, assigned to an owner, and tracked until it is resolved or formally accepted. For example, a manager may say, "We have an access control audit next week. Can we prove that user access was approved and reviewed?" The GRC analyst may respond, "I will map the requirement to the control, collect the approval and review evidence, and track any missing information." Although the analyst may not configure the technical system, the analyst must understand how that system is protected. This leads to another common question. Does a GRC analyst need to know coding? So, does a GRC analyst need coding skills? For most entry-level GRC positions, coding is not normally a primary requirement. However, this does not mean the role is completely non-technical. A GRC analyst needs enough technical knowledge to understand the systems and controls being evaluated. For example, you should understand basic concepts related to identity and access management, cloud security, encryption, vulnerability management, networking, logging, and incident response. You may not be responsible for configuring these technologies, but you should understand what the control is intended to do, what risk it reduces, and what evidence may demonstrate that it is working. The goal is not necessarily to become a developer. The goal is to develop sufficient technical literacy to communicate effectively with security engineers, cloud teams, auditors, managers, and control owners. Technical understanding is important, but it is only one part of the role. Let us now examine the other essential skills required for success. So, what essential skills do you need to succeed as a GRC analyst? The first important skill is communication. A GRC analyst must explain technical risks to business leaders and explain compliance requirements to technical teams. The second skill is critical thinking. GRC is not only about confirming that a control exists. You must determine whether that control actually reduces the identified risk. Attention to detail is also essential because audit evidence, policies, reports, tickets, approvals, and system records must be reviewed carefully. Writing is another major part of the role. GRC analysts regularly prepare policies, risk statements, assessment reports, remediation updates, and executive summaries. You should also understand risk management options. An organization may choose to mitigate a risk, avoid it, transfer it, or formally accept it. The strongest GRC analysts are able to translate technical information into clear business language. These skills are used through several common GRC tools and work products, which we will examine next. So, which tools and work products should an aspiring GRC analyst understand? Organizations may use different software platforms, but the fundamental GRC artifacts are often similar. A policy library is used to organize security policies, standards, procedures, and supporting documents. A risk register records identified risks, their potential impact, likelihood, treatment decision, responsible owner, and current status. A control matrix connects regulatory or framework requirements with internal controls, control owners, testing procedures, and supporting evidence. Audit and evidence trackers help organize information requests, documents, screenshots, system reports, approvals, and auditor responses. Remediation trackers are used to monitor compliance gaps, corrective actions, owners, due dates, and closure evidence. Vendor questionnaires are also commonly used to assess the cybersecurity practices of third-party service providers. As a beginner, you do not need to master every commercial GRC platform immediately. Start by understanding the purpose and structure of the core work products. Once you understand these tools and artifacts, you can follow a more practical roadmap for entering the field without previous experience. So, how can you start a GRC career without previous experience? The first step is to build a foundation in cybersecurity. Learn the basics of networking, identity and access management, vulnerability management, cloud computing, security controls, and incident response terminology. The second step is to learn basic GRC concepts. Understand how risks are identified, assessed, treated, monitored, and reported. Also learn how controls are tested, how evidence is collected, and how remediation activities are tracked. The third step is to study the structure of common frameworks, such as the NIST Cybersecurity Framework or ISO 27001. Do not begin by trying to memorize every requirement. Instead, understand why the framework exists, how its requirements are organized, and how the controls help reduce business risk. After developing this foundation, the next step is to demonstrate what you have learned through a practical GRC portfolio. So, how do you build a practical GRC portfolio when you have never worked in a GRC position? You can create realistic projects for a fictional organization. The first project could be an information security policy that defines responsibilities, acceptable practices, and management expectations. The second project could be a risk register for a sample cloud application. For each risk, document the risk description, business impact, likelihood, responsible owner, existing controls, and proposed treatment. The third project could be a framework gap assessment. Compare a fictional organization's practices with selected requirements from a framework, such as NIST Cybersecurity Framework or ISO 27001. The fourth project could be an evidence checklist for an access control audit. The checklist may include user access approvals, current user lists, access review records, account removal tickets, and management sign-off. During an interview, you can then explain, I created sample policies, a risk register, a framework gap assessment, and an audit evidence checklist. This demonstrates practical understanding without claiming professional experience you do not have. Along with your portfolio, certifications can provide additional structure and credibility. So, which certifications can support your GRC career path? At the beginner level, you may consider the Google Cybersecurity Professional Certificate, or CompTIA Security Plus, to develop a broader cybersecurity foundation. As you gain more understanding of risk management and compliance, certifications such as CGRC or CRISC may become relevant. More advanced certifications include CISA and CISM. However, certifications should not be treated as replacements for practical skills. Some certifications may also have professional experience requirements before the full credential can be awarded, so always review the current requirements from the official certification provider. A balanced approach works best. Use certifications to structure your learning and use portfolio projects to demonstrate how you can apply that knowledge. After developing your skills, portfolio, and certification plan, the next challenge is positioning yourself correctly in the job market.
So, how should you prepare your resume and expand your GRC job search? First, do not search only for the title GRC Analyst. Related job titles may include IT Compliance Analyst, Risk Analyst, Information Security Auditor, Privacy Analyst, Security Assurance Analyst, Vendor Risk Analyst, or Cybersecurity Compliance Analyst. Next, identify transferable experience from your previous roles. Quality assurance experience can demonstrate control testing, documentation, and attention to detail. Business analysis experience can demonstrate requirements gathering, process analysis, and stakeholder communication. Project management experience can demonstrate ownership, tracking, reporting, and remediation follow-up. Experience in healthcare, finance, legal services, auditing, or other regulated industries may also be valuable because these environments depend heavily on privacy, documentation, compliance, and risk management. Use accurate terms such as risk assessment, control testing, audit support, evidence collection, gap analysis, and remediation tracking when they genuinely match your skills or project work. Once your resume creates an interview opportunity, you must be ready to explain your experience honestly and clearly. So, how can you answer interview questions when you do not have formal GRC experience? Let us look at a realistic conversation. Hiring manager: you do not have a previous cybersecurity job title. Why should we consider you for a GRC role? Candidate: I understand the GRC workflow, including policy management, risk assessment, control testing, evidence collection, audit support, and remediation tracking. I have also created practical GRC portfolio projects. The hiring manager may then ask, can you provide an example? The candidate could respond, for an access control review, I would first identify the applicable requirement and related control. I would then request the current user list, access approvals, periodic access review evidence, and account removal records. Any missing or inconsistent evidence would be documented and tracked with the responsible owner. This answer does not claim experience that the candidate does not have. Instead, it demonstrates an understanding of the workflow and the ability to apply GRC concepts to a practical situation. Now let us combine everything into a focused 30-day starting plan.
So, what can you do during your first 30 days to begin moving toward a GRC career? During the first week, focus on cybersecurity fundamentals. Learn the basics of networks, identity and access management, cloud security, vulnerabilities, encryption, logging, and incident response. During the second week, focus on GRC concepts. Study risk assessments, security controls, control testing, audit evidence, policy management, and remediation tracking. During the third week, begin building your portfolio. Create a sample security policy, risk register, gap assessment, and access control evidence checklist. During the fourth week, update your resume, improve your professional profile, and begin applying for GRC and related risk, compliance, audit, privacy, and security assurance roles. You do not need to know everything before applying. You need to show that you understand how business risks connect to security controls, how controls connect to evidence, and how that evidence supports audits and business decisions. Start with one practical portfolio project, complete it carefully, and use it to demonstrate your ability. Thank you for watching this guide on becoming a GRC analyst with no previous experience. I hope this roadmap helps you take your first practical step toward a career in governance, risk, and compliance.